we had us upstairs, and a balcony upstairs. And I was with a couple other boys that, I suppose, were about 10 years old. And so we decided we'll go up to the balcony. Nobody else was in the balcony, so we were in the balcony. and the preacher was preaching, and he saw us up in the balcony, and he publicly called us down. Bethel Church was a wonderful church, a good, solid evangelical church.
I don't remember all the things these other people do, but from Sunday school, I remember the little chairs we sat on, and I had 2 of those little chairs in my possession.
Can you still sit in them?
I want to verify what Joseph said, because I remember the situation very well. I remember seeing him up there in the balcony. The church had a huge belly furnace downstairs, and they hid around there. But he had 2 friends with him that he. But the thing I want to say, it was a wonderful church to grow up in, and Grandma lived with us, and she couldn't understand, and she said that she didn't understand English, but I think she understood so much more than she ever admitted to. But we would have to take our turns to stay home on Sunday sometimes to be with her. Oh, I cried and cried and cried if it was my Sunday, because I love church so much. And I accepted Christ at the age of 10, and then our church, during a period of great revival, 2 or 3 years where so many accepted Christ. But I was about the first one in my family to accept Christ. But and then I'd give testimonies. Every time we had a testimony meeting, I got up. But nobody said, "Shut up, little girl, you don't know what you're talking about." But they rather encouraged me. It was a wonderful church.
Well, I can't say I enjoyed Sunday school. Because
She was with all our
don't tell my story. I was the only girl with all those boys, and I hated it.
I bet you loved it.
I just want to tell you some things that I remember about Bethel Church. It was a big white church near Yale. It was a large building. It was, way out in the country, and about every Sunday morning we had like 350 people there. And we also had, really good Bible schools. It was like 2 weeks, and often Mama would invite her niece to send her children to our house. We would stay at our house, and we would take them, to Bible school. The Christmas programs, they were just I thought they were just out of this world good. And in those days, the little girls all got new dresses. And so, of course, I got a new dress, too. And I remember one Sunday, one Christmas Eve, it was snowing out. And the snow was just coming straight down. There was a men's entrance to church and a ladies' entrance to church. And the lights were on. And it was just like a dream. And in those days, the men sat on one side, the women sat on the other side. But it wasn't any big deal, you know, if you crossed over, because usually the young couples with their children would sit together.
This isn't so churchy. The one thing that hasn't been said was on Christmas Eve when they had that program. And I think, did everybody in the congregation get a sack with candy and peanuts and chocolate and orange maybe? Oh, I look forward to that for weeks in advance.
Since you brought up Grandma, your grandmother, I thought the next question would be about dolls. And my guess is that Uncle Joe doesn't have anything to say about dolls.
Grandma lived with us. And she always wore a shawl. She was a believer, but very, very strict. And Mom bought the two girls a dolls. And Grandma thought they were idols. So she threw them in the stove and burned them up.
Well, we didn't have to start with real dolls, so we made our own. We used a corn cup. I made a doll, with a corn cup. Or any other thing that would form the shape of a doll. But our grandmother was a strong believer that those real dolls were idols. And for some we got two dolls, real dolls, but Mother destroyed them because of how Grandma felt about them being idols. And I didn't recall playing with dolls too much. We played with all kinds of other imaginary things.
Not only dolls, but we never had ever a purchased toy. We never had a purchased toy. Not only dolls, all of our things we played with were homemade, with imaginative things, and we never suffered from that. We had lots of fun.
Well, I know how to make our dolls. When I was little, we took a towel.
That's right.
And we wrapped it up real tight and put a rope around it so it would hold, and that was our doll. And so we used these, I did anyway. I would play like I was in a hospital. These were the beds in the house were my patients. And I would take my doll to each one of those rooms to cheer him up with my doll.
Now I was really little, probably 5 or 6 years old, 7 maybe, and I had a doll. And down the road from us, we had neighbors. And I don't know what got into him, but he took the hammer and he broke the face of that doll. Our sister-in-law, Addie, was really, she was very good to us. And so she worked at Woolsworth, and there were some dolls, 2 dolls that we are acquainted with, that were broken and they couldn't sell. So she gave them to Naomi and I for Christmas.
Little cracks.
Yeah. And guess who got the very best doll? Neon.
And not only that, my wonderful sister, Maureen, brought me something that I bet you none of you. And it was a boy doll with red hair. I mean, I love that doll, and I'm going to thank you today for that doll. The body of the doll kind of got soft and everything, but I took the head, and I still have that doll.
Did you not have it repaired? I thought you did.
I had to give it a whole new body, but I still, the head has never been repaired.
Is that how he do it?
I mean, it was the cutest doll I've ever seen.
I've never seen a boy doll before.
It's a Canadian doll.
Now, I want you to notice something. Do you notice the divide between the siblings?
Yes.
In ages, where some grew up and couldn't have things, and the last two got whatever. Do you know how many times my mother has told me that? Okay, next question. Almost church.
I like fishing all my life. But as a child, I can never remember catching a fish. And as a dog, I get ready to go fishing and go fishing. And then I pray, Lord, help me to catch a fish. But he never answers that prayer.
Where would you go fishing? Bathtub.
Okay. Where did we go fishing?
Where?
I don't know.
James River?
James River.
James River, Osceola Lake.
Lake
That's in the-
Water.
And it was a remember that fishing is around, is it harvest time?
Bullhead.
Dad would take us out fishing or swimming. I don't know, but I know that to this day, my favorite fish is bullhead.
We didn't go often fishing, but we went to those places, and the only fish we ever caught was bullheads. And we really learned to like them. And then in later years, when we lived in Minot, North Dakota, the pastor's wife, we went fishing in these big lakes. And when we would catch bullheads and keep them, they all laughed at us. Why do you want those yellow bellies? We love the bullheads.
Well, I don't know if this fishing is timely for when we were kids, or you think just that.
I always thought we had a fun and dad. He liked to entertain, take us all. You know, when we went to a store, this is a little bit beyond fishing, but he would always want to buy something for us kids that went along with him, and then the other kids that came, he would like to give them some ice cream cone or something. He was a fun dad, and so he loved to take us fishing in that Osceola Lake. And that Osceola Lake was so important, because we fished there, but then in the summertime when we worked hard out in the field, we went there to take our baths at night.
Yeah, Daddy liked to fish, but I would not call him a fisherman, because when he fished, you wanted to be a good long ways away. Now, when you throw out your rod and reel, which was a big thing, you know, because we always fished with a pole. He should have fished with a pole all his life, but he didn't. You know, you would throw your rod and reel out like this. Daddy did it this way. And at least twice he caught himself.
I was gonna take that, because I had to take him to the doctor once to get his, you know, the fish out of his ear. Yeah, he caught it in his thumb. But I remember those special days when we went. It would be like, you know, we going to the ocean or some place. We went one day maybe to Lake Preston, and for all the family would come and we would have a picnic, and most of the time at that time, Gary and I would just play in the water and swim rather than fish. My favorite time of fishing was when I was in high school, and my parents had the day off on Wednesdays, and very often my dad and I would go to the Jim River around Freeman to fish. And I loved it because then all the troubles of my life went away when Dad and I were on the shore, you know, fishing. Now we caught not only bullheads, but carp. And now people think carp is ugh. But that was a clean river then, and I loved it. My mother was I don't know why, I think she was the best fish fryer, you know, that I ever experienced. Now this is the way my mother fished. Throw out the line, catch something, and it would go over there for my dad to take off the worm and put a new worm on. So this was my mother's way of fishing. But, you know, to this day, the last time I was in Freeman, one of the grocery stores had smoked carp. I took a bunch of it back with me. It was delicious. And I might stop in Freeman and see if they have some more. They don't have them anymore?
Well, no, it's not, it's out of season.
Oh.
That's a winter fish.
And she would go fishing at Lake Byron. And so on her way, now I don't know, I suppose Don, I don't know if Don was born yet or not, but she would stop in at our house. And when she'd say, well, she's going fishing, and of course Naomi and I wanted to go along. She'd say, well, do you have your work all done? And of course I don't think Mama ever said no, but that was a special time when Edna would stop in and let us go fishing with her.
Yeah, I forgot about the Edna years in a way when I visited. She and I would visit in Freeman in the summers with our kids, and Edna was there, and we often went fishing there at Olivet.
South Dakota is not known for tornadoes. It's rare. But in South Dakota, one summer day, here came a tornado. And Dad, I don't know where Dad was, but Mom and us kids, we went into the basement and prayed. And the tornado passed away about a quarter of a mile to our right. I mean, not in the south. But it didn't do much damage. It was harvest time. It turned turned the binder around, and then it took all the bundles away. And that's my experience with tornadoes.
Well, I remember this a little different. I know we were out in the field, stooking grain. Huh? Canadians here, we stook instead of shot. Okay, and so we were doing it, and we saw this black cloud coming. And so the folks said, we gotta hurry home. Dad unhitched the horses from the binder, and we hurried home. And Mother and us kids got into the house, but our dad was still in the barn with the horses. I mean, that's how soon it came after we got home. And right behind the barn, not far away, was a straw stack. And when this tornado passed, the straw stack was gone. A chicken house had been moved off of its platform, and it went out and turned, like he said, and went on the road between a neighbor and the schoolhouse and took the next farm. Okay, that's how I remember that tornado.
Whose farm did it take?
But the tornado was so close you could see it. It was just a straight, black, twirling point.
I say amen to all he said. It's exactly right.
Both of them.
My dad told me about that tornado, and he said that when that straw pile went, one of the pieces of straw drilled through a piece of wood in their farm, in the barn. That's how a piece of straw went through the wood.
Joe was asking for it too.
These girls have a bigger sense of imagination than
I don't remember tornadoes. Are you gonna put lightning on there and thunder?
Say about lightning.
Okay, well, I'm terrible scared of lightning because I was in one of the houses we lived in. I was upstairs in bed with father little grandchildren, not my grandchildren, my Kathy and Randy, that group. And we were sleeping and lightning struck our house and it struck the side of our bed. There was a black mark. But we all survived. You can tell we're still here.
That explains a lot of things about us, doesn't it?
And so to this day, I was so glad we moved to Southern California because there were no lightning and thundering there. But it's starting over there now too.
You know what? You know how they say lightning only doesn't strike twice in one place? So what we did that night is because it struck right beside the bed, we all got in that one same bed so that if it struck again, we knew it wasn't going to strike there again.
And my mother told me that during that tornado, they all went to the root cellar down there, but Grandpa went into the barn, and Grandma was so mad at him for going into the barn and calming the animals rather than being in the root cellar. Okay. Stop.
Maureen and I are close. close together. We did many things together. Many things. And, but I think because of her, I got more spankings than anybody else. Well, we had, there's a season where you could trap. And in those days, skunks were a good price. And so Marina and I went, and we went out on the road and we looked in the culvert, and here were 3 skunks. How can you get there? But it was a day before the season opened. Well, we had a 22 rifle. We were about, I was probably in the 7th grade and Marina in the 6th. So we took that rifle and we shot in and we killed them. Yeah, but how do you get them out? Well, we got a piece of barbed wire fence and stuck it in and twisted it, and we twisted it into their hair, and then we pulled them out. Well, it was a day before the season opened, and the mailman was soon coming. So we hid in the ditch, so that the mailman wouldn't see us and report us. Well, we got the house and we sold them and at a good price.
We had Western horses, and Joe and I loved to ride. And this is how, when we did the trapping, we would go out on horseback to check all the tracks that we had set out. And we got 10 cents for every skunk that we killed. So that was our spending money. I'm sure we got sprayed a few times, especially by looking into folders. That was really a fun time. We really enjoyed it together.
I don't remember skunking. That's a new word, isn't it? Anyway, the only thing I remember is one time Eli got really sprayed good, and we smelled it for a long time.
Well, I said that we got a good price on them. It surely was more than 10 cents. It probably was $1 each.
Here we have a case of inflation.
It's an imagination.
Okay, next one.
He got $5 one time.
This may be our last one for this session.
I only remember that I didn't know her in South Dakota. She married into Canada, and when I went to school at Prairie Bible Institute in Alberta, Canada, for Christmas we Christmas vacation, I always went down to her house to spend the vacation. And she was a very gentle person, just like my mother.
My mother was a different one.
Yeah, he pretty well said about Aunt Lizzie, because Joe and I were inseparable until the age of 21. And then a few years later, he went up back to Prayer Bible Institute, and I didn't go. And he had a car called She Has To. She has to have gas, she has to have oil, she has to have lots of equipment. And so he let me use that car while he was gone. Now, I learned to drive car at a very, very early age. At age 6, my brother Eli would put me on his lap and let me do the steering while they drove. And then at age 12, I drove all by myself. I was really trusted that way. And so I did a lot of field work with my dad. I raked hay, I did all of that, so I would take the car and go out there. And here one day I ended up in the ditch. I'm not sure how or why, so how was I going to get out? I didn't want him to know that. And so I walked to a neighbor, and he got a tractor and pulled me back up in the road. And from then on, I don't think my daddy ever found out about that.
I just thinking of, we had this Model A, the first car that I could call the Model A Ford, but we were a lot of us. So we were sometimes triple-decked to go to church, triple-decked. And we would just, we'd drive up to the front of the church, and we didn't have extra clothes, special clothes. So we'd park in the front of the church, and we never winter, there's no winter or summer clothes, and we run into church, and then we had our two twin cousins live with us too, so that added extra, our triple-decker cars. And Joseph, I remember how he cleaned that car, washed the car, if he ever was going to have a date. Oh, he really was careful about washing that car.
You guys talked about everything from cars to trucks. And what are we talking about now?
Cars, trucks, or Aunt Lizzie.
Well, I know that Shasta was still around when Albert and I dated. And he came up to visit me one time. And we drove that Shasta some place. Did we get stuck? I don't know. But anyway, we sat out there at the end of the road, and it was Shasta. And I suppose we kissed him.
Talk about Aunt Lizzie. She was as wide as she was tall. And our mother loved to laugh, Aunt Lizzie loved to laugh. But and also at our early family camps, you couldn't keep a secret from Aunt Lizzie that we were going to meet at this certain time. It didn't matter. Somehow, she and Marvin and Johnny David would show up. Well, anyway, she came to visit us in the winter one time, and I think it was just Aunt Lizzie, and we had a big snow. Our house was, you know, on the level, but we had a creek down below. And then Daddy bought us, we had 2 sleds, and we, oh my, how we had fun. But Mama and Aunt Lizzie were going to go down the hill that day. So they got on the sleds. And particularly Aunt Lizzie, she got on the sled. And we gave her a push. And she went down a little ways and the sled stopped. But she kept riding on. Can you believe this is with Aunt Lizzie and stuff? When my folks were cooks at Sunshine Bible Academy, I think Alana was home. We got a notion that we were going to go to Montana to visit Aunt Lizzie. Now, we never called Aunt Lizzie to say, could we come? Was this convenient? I don't understand why. But we drove all the way. I mean, they could have been gone, but they were home and welcomed us. Now, in return, maybe this is a relationship my mom had with Aunt Lizzie, but the same thing would happen. We'd never know when there would be a knock on the door, and there would be Aunt Lizzie's family staying for a week.
We were talking about cars. My dad would tell a story about he and Uncle Eli driving in the field somewhere, and my dad was deathly afraid of snakes. And Uncle Eli caught a snake and put it in the middle of the car seat. And then he asked my dad if he could borrow his handkerchief. And my dad reached down to get his handkerchief out of the pocket. My dad was driving, and he asked my dad if he could get the handkerchief, and my dad reached down and felt the snake, and my dad opened the car door and jumped out.
There were some a year, not many, where rabbits were prolific. If you remember the rabbits, and they were those. It was winter, the snow, and the rabbits had changed color. And Eli and Joe Stahl, Brother John, whoever was. They would go out at night and shoot rabbits. You remember that? And they almost got so many, and they were so prolific that the bed of the back of the car, of the pickup, or whatever they ran, was full of rabbits.
But anyhow, us girls tagged along, and there were so many rabbits that kept their feet warm in the back.
Dad would go rabbit hunting. At night, I remember going with them one night, and a car went past, and they thought it was the sheriff, the warden, and so they turned off the lights. And I remember as a little kid in that car, afraid as they're driving all around with all of the lights off in the dark, trying not to get found by the sheriff.
Yeah. No, Eli's older. Yeah.
Julie, my dad said your stories all twisted up.
About the snake.
About the snake.
Oh.
Okay, this is one more story about Shasta, and it is a true story. It is not imagined. Joe attended Grace to finish up, whatever I think, and after his Prairie, and I was still in school, and he had Shasta, and we dated in that car in Shasta, and One night we were in front of a, I think it was an ice cream place, and he was sitting there in the car, and he must have heard the message from Shasta. He has to have a what?
Shasta once knew its Gerald. This social Shasta once knew its gals. This social Shasta once knew its engagements as they rode down the road of life. This social Shasta once knew its fellows. This social Shasta once knew its gals. Now it sets on Lester's farm as the winds around it blast. Ain't gonna need this car no longer. Ain't gonna need this car no more. Ain't got time to go to the tires. Ain't got time to mend the roof. Ain't got time to oil the hinges or to mend the window. Ain't gonna need this car no longer. I've been ready for no control.
Well, how many of you have a boy or a girl here that's 4 and 5 years old? Raise your hand. Anybody else? Or you remember your 4 and 5-year-old children? Okay. I was 4 and Joe was 5. What?
Is the mic high enough for him?
Okay. Okay. And we had, I remember a big white horse, I don't know if it was that. And Joe was on it and came to the front porch for me to get on the horse. And the idea was we were to go out and watch the cattle so they wouldn't go into the neighbor's cornfield. And so we took off and rode out there and stayed there until, I don't know what time in the day we went there, but in the afternoon, then our brothers that were in grade school would come and relieve us, and then we would go home. Well, this one time they couldn't find me. And they looked and finally discovered that I had fallen asleep close to a large badger hole.
I've never heard this story before.
It's true. That's true. And so, okay.
You guys have set us up for big arguments. Because we don't always agree on the stories. So, I'll be quiet.
Which means to say that she's totally wrong. Is that right?
And so I started to milk at an early age. Very early age. In the wintertime, you had to be careful not to lean your head against the cow because of the lice that guys had. You know, they got extra fur in the wintertime. And you lean your head against the cow, you get lice.
And he squirted, he took the milk and squirted it on us kids. While he was milking, he would take the shit and go and squirt it.
And we girls, we could milk faster than the boys, than John and Joseph. And so they'd always find something else to do. So we would we would get the milking done.
Somebody was getting married at our house, and that seemed like every year somebody was getting married. So Joey was already married, and I was still a kid, and we were supposed to go out and milk the cows. So I went out and I milked, and Joey didn't come. Cow number 2, Joey didn't come. Cow number 3, Joey didn't come. And I was getting madder and madder because he did not show up. Well, then it got to be a challenge. Can I get all of the cows milked before he shows up? Well, I think I got them all milked except 2. There might have been 8 or 10 cows, and so I would have milked 6 or 8 of them.
You have to remember that when she said Joey, she meant me, because I was also called Joey.
Okay, I started milking a cow when I was 6 years old.
I did too.
They gave me the friendliest cow to milk.
Oh.
And the thing was, we would take our cups out to the milk barn and drink the fresh, warm milk. And therefore, for the rest of our lives, we hated milk. Not quite, but now I can drink it, but it has to be cold.
Oh.
Other chores.
It has to be nice.
Yeah, I see that. Well, is that just for whatever age? Well, we did like to surprise our parents when we were a bit older. Because if we had company, like Sunday afternoons, and they stayed a long time, we would sneak out and do all the chores.
What about indoors?
Our grandmother lived with us, and so she was great at washing dishes, and we sure we let her do a lot before we came in and helped. She was great in keeping things.
When I was a little girl, I always wanted to please my mother, so she could never scold me. So my chores, like when we folded clothes, I always did it so neat, and then I put it in my drawer, and it was always really neat. She was always so proud how I kept my clothes. I didn't have very many.
But we had enough clothes. My job was like in the winter time, when I got home from school, my job was to bring in the coal, so that they would have enough coal for the night and then for the next day. And then the other thing that we did Saturday's work. And our Saturday's job was to clean the house from top to bottom.
I never remember my mother cleaning anything but the kitchen. I don't think she ever did clean anything but the kitchen. But one of my jobs was, when we still lived on the farm, was to go and get the cows. And so I can remember getting thick slabs of homemade bread, and I like to put, not mayonnaise, what's the other thing called?
Butter?
Peanut butter.
Miracle Whip, spread it thick on my bread, and then I would take off to go get the cows. Then when they were cooks at Sunshine Bible Academy, I kept the whole house. Nothing, my mom and dad were so busy with doing that I did everything.
After Naomi and I would work really hard so that we were done cleaning house by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's when the hit parade came on. And we had a notebook that we kept track of the number 1 song down to about the number 20 song, and then we knew them in those days. Did you? No.
Can we see the top?
Woo, watermelon!
I like watermelon. In Marine's story, when she and I were sent out to watch the cows so they wouldn't get in the corn, Mother sent a small watermelon along.
Mom, share.
Watermelon. I was called Watermelon Jack, because I did a lot of farm work. And with horses, I cut the grass for haying, and I always took a small watermelon with me. That's where I acquired the name Watermelon Jack.
How did you keep it cool?
What?
How did you keep the watermelon cool?
Well, it didn't matter what temperature.
Probably put it in the shade.
We put the watermelon in the water tank. But our friends, the Johnny Waldner family, we always just had little watermelons. They had big watermelons. And when we would go to their house, which we did pretty often, we just gouged ourselves up with watermelon. Well, one day, our neighbor across the road from us, Julius and Adeline Deckert, she invited me to spend the night with her because her husband was going to be away. This was just across the road from us. Well, I went with her, to her, and after she, in the evening, she brought out watermelon, and I started to eat watermelon. I loved watermelon. I ate and ate watermelon until I couldn't eat anything more. I went outside and threw up and came back in to eat more.
I remember a time or two where to cool the watermelon, we would hang it down the well.
So you grew the watermelon in your own garden?
The garden was always the work of Mom and the girls. And but I remember that we'd come home from the field hungry. We'd go to the garden and pull up a carrot, wipe it off on our trousers, and eat good carrots.
I don't remember too much about gardens except that we loved to eat the fresh peas. Pick the peas in the garden and eat them. And then we had an abundance of radishes. And radishes were a part of our breakfast meal.
Bread and butter and radish.
We played church in the garden a lot because, you know, we had those rows and rows and rows of people. And so we would play church there. And we'd parade up and down the roads. And then we'd go ahead and we gave big sermons, lots of sermons at the front and preached. Or we went in and sang. But this was our church. And we would seat people. And we had a big church. And we played that a lot.
Well, I know one summer we planted a lot of peas. And I know we sat in the garden for days and days, and we made 100 quarts of peas. That's a lot.
Well, we would...
This is related to.
Okay, yeah, we would... I can remember having, like, you know, a bushel basket full of peas, and we all sit around and shell them, yeah. And that was very good. I was lucky enough to kind of be allergic to radishes. No, not work. But it made my hands, you know, I'd break out with itching. I like to eat them. And I still will treat myself to butter and bread and radishes. But I didn't have to do that. And my favorite thing, I think, with gardening was digging for potatoes. I always thought that was so much fun. But our mother had a showcase garden. It was down in an area where there was plenty of moisture, and people would drive by, I think, just to see Mom's garden.
You know, Mama likes to play games, so canning time was no exception. We played games. You know, we had lots and lots of green beans. So she would say, let's see who can snip, you know, the ends off the green beans. How many can do the most, the fastest, you know, like 10 the fastest or something. But it was always game time when you prepared the vegetables for planting. One thing, we had beets. I never really have cared for beets, but oh, how I loved to can them. Because you put them in the water, and that water, you know, was just such a beautiful color. And then you peel them, and the outsides would just slide off real easy. And we sliced them, and then you put them in the water or the solution in the jar. And it was so pretty. And Mama even let me can them all by myself. Our mother was the greatest game player. She just loved to play games. And if we were doing garden things like beans or corn, cutting up corn, we played Bible games. 20 things. And I, to this day, contribute my knowledge of Bible characters to those games we played. And I still use the same game when I'm traveling with people, especially with children. Try it. When you're traveling, play Bible games with your children, or when you're doing a routine. God, Mother was wonderful, and I have to say, the Lord gave me a tremendous quality of names that I remember today just because of that. It's something to keep on as a family.
Okay. I have one just for Uncle Joe. I think only one person needs to tell the story. Did you have any dust storms?
Yes, we had dust storms. And there were three years there where it was very, very dry. Now, the card says keeping warm.
No, that's,
Oh.
you're talking about dust storms.
Okay. Yes, we had dust storms, and the crops failed. Now, we had a self-flowing well, an artesian well, and that's why we could have such a good garden. But dust storms, I remember.
The dust storms were so bad that it was like snow pile, a snow pile. If you had a fence line like this, the things from North Dakota or wherever it came from, the soil mound up. It was a big pile like a snow pile. And then as a family, we went to the neighbor's field and we straddled the family looking for Indian heads. It had taken that much soil off the top. And when in those dust storms, if that hit your face, it pitted it. There were particles of sand and of stone there that fixed. Those were hard days.
Oh, wow. What do you mean Indian heads? What do you
Arrowheads.
Arrowheads.
The skulls?
Arrowheads.
Oh, arrowheads.
Let's clarify that.
Okay, John said that there are 504 years of combined experience.
Yeah. Real close, maybe 504, 503.
Okay.
That's a half of a
Keeping warm. We boys, there's three of us, we had our own room, and in the wintertime, it got cold, like 30 below. But how to keep warm in the 30 below unheated house? Well, that was simple. You had a feather tick that you slept on. That's like a super to keep you warm. And on top of that, you had another feather tick, tick. So you were like warm as a bug in the rug in a 30 below house.
Did they see the same bed or?
I've got to tell this story. I learned a few things after I married Joe. And he slept, there were 3 boys in the bed. I think the girls were in the next room. But Joey was in the middle because he was the youngest. And dare I say this?
Yes.
I think he was the only one that didn't wet the bed. Is that right? Is that right? And what was he going to do about that? So he crawled up to the head of the bed, and the other 2 on this side, and he was lying like that. Okay, but keeping warm. This is when, of course, we were older, and our brothers hunted rabbits, you know, in the winter time. And so my sister Edna and I would ride along in the back seat, and as they shot the rabbits, the warm rabbits they throw in the bag, and that's how we kept our feet warm. That when I was little, going to grade, starting my first grade, we walked to school. And we walked across the pasture, and so what they did to me, they completely blindfolded me, covered my face to keep it warm, and led me by hand to school that way. I kept warm around a beautiful stove. We had a stove that had a lot of little windows, and the windows weren't glass. Isinglass. And I had my feet way like this, and my nightgown over it. And I sat so close to the store, and someone came and pushed me. I think it was you. And she pushed me right onto the stove. And I had this whole side was burned. And so my folks took me to the emergency. And on the way, it was cold winter, I put my face against the car window. And when we got to the doctor, he said, well, how did you take care of it? And I said, well, I put it against the cold window. And he said, that was the wrong thing to do. But nowadays, that's the right thing to do, and I have no scars.
It turned out to be the right thing.
You know, where did we get our feather ticks from? Well, we raised geese, and we had ducks. Of course, we saved all those feathers, and that's where the feather ticks came from. And I noticed some of the older nieces and nephews, like probably Kathy or Gary, Steve, did you get that too? All right, they got feather pillows for a wedding gift. Okay, so it was down the road a ways. I mean, from Gary on down, they got feather pillows for a wedding gift.
For grandma and grandpa.
Yeah, grandma.
I still have it.
The way I kept warm is that I had this sister that took care of me. And she would go and lie in the bed and warm it up and then call me up to bed.
That's nice, right?
This is from your childhood.
Okay. Missionaries, are we just talking about our mission?
No, here.
Can we see the topic? She said, what's the topic today?
No, I can't remember any missionaries, but I do remember pastors, preachers. So it wasn't until I was older that I met missionaries, and the missionaries came to our church. They came to the Bible camp, and so that's my earliest memories of missionaries.
Well, the first missionaries I remember, I think, was their last name Cheddar? I can't remember, but they were in Africa. And so they came home and showed us the pictures of the Africans. And oh my, was that bad, because the women were topless. The little children had no clothes on at all. And they showed those pictures at church, and we got talked about it at our house for a while.
Well, my first notion of missionaries was June and Kenny Munger taking off And I hadn't been happy at all that she got married, because I was so worried that she loved somebody else more than she loved our family, and I pouted for, I think, several days. Well, then, when they had that pickup truck and were about to go away for 5 years, I was not happy. We all have to admit that Byron Bible Camp had a lot to do with our spiritual life. We talked about our church yesterday. That was a good church, but almost equal unto it was our experience at a Bible camp. My parents had one missionary book, and it was from China. And as a little girl, I paged through that book, and I just devoured the pictures. They were so, and that people had such deep needs, and it struck my heart. As a girl of 10, I invited Christ into my life, and it was a great experience for me. The Sunday school teacher, who I deeply loved, and the pastor's wife helped me, and they had, in their experience, led others to Christ, and had gave me a verse of John 5:24 as my verse to cling to of assurance of salvation. I went to Bible camp later on, and I really felt a deep need in my life. I only went as a camper once, otherwise I was a teacher or on staff. And I really felt God working. And then as I came home and had my devotions, one morning, our folks really encouraged us to have private family devotions. And if we were having devotions, but maybe it was time to go out to do something else, if we would say, I'm in the middle of my devotions, they said, okay, you keep it. We had such wonderful, godly parents. I always call them contagious Christians. But I was reading in John chapter 4, and the verses of I sent you to reap just sprung out on me. And I knew God was calling me to be a missionary. And I began to share that with my family and then with the church as a little girl. And they never said no. And I was then the first one from the church to be sponsored by the church as a missionary. God has blessed that tremendously. And the things that I've learned from Vacation Bible School, not Vacation Bible, from church, from camp, and home, just has struck in my life. And you never stop being a missionary.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Well, I always liked quartet. I sang in the quartet once, but it was a bad experience. We were at a funeral, and we were to sing, and so we got up and sang. The pianist must have been very nervous. She did not play a very good introduction, and I was off pitch, and I was off pitch all through the song.
Blame it on the pianist.
Who else is in the quartet?
Well, we have our own quartet. You think we can try it?
Oh, yes.
This is going to be fun.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
They want to sing. They want to sing.
Oh, yeah.
This, I think we sang this at a wedding. Okay, let's start.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody.
That's so cute.
Okay, let's try it.
So you four were always in quartet?
Good evening, everybody. How you do? Good evening, everybody. How you do? We are the Big Quartet of the Walter family. How do you do?
I'm Joanne Walter.
How do you do?
I sing all voices. That's my
How do you do? We are the Big Quartet from the Walter family. How do you do?
Well, see it.
That's enough.
Come on, Jerry.
What I really want to find out about quartets is how many of you girls met your husbands through a quartet?
Oh, mine was in the quartet too.
Okay. Okay.
How do you do?
Can I say one other thing?
Oh, yes.
Everything we want.
Funny, this was at what was called the Hofer Church. And I think this was the quartet. I know at least Paul Friesen was probably in this quartet. And they said they were going to sing a German song. So the minister gets up, walks down to the pianist and says, "Can you play in German?"
So just give one more last chance to tell any story. But it's gotta be cut out.
Any story.
You think we're siblings? I have one sibling and 8 sets of parents.
I think I'm the same way. I have one sibling, you know, when I thought we had a wonderful family. You know, it was just right. And then June got married. And that started it, that our family was breaking up. Well, then the next year, it just absolutely, I would say it broke my heart because it kind of did, it really did. Joy and Jeanette got married. Joanne and Albert got married. Let's see, no, it was Maureen that got married next. So that started it. But when Joy and Jeanette got married, and a month later Joanne got married, in a way I was really kind of devastated because they're with my family. And really truly, you know, can't help it. It's never been the same since. But that hurt. That really hurt when my family started to break apart. Just because these other people came and interrupted it. Of course, when I got married, it was wonderful. For a while, at least.
Are we supposed to talk about anything?
Yeah.
Well, we played a lot of church. There was one house we lived in, had a big stage. And so we wanted an audience. So we sometimes scraped the dirt to make a long aisle. And then we went that way for the seats. And then we got up on this big stage, and did we ever sing? Do you all remember that?
Well, see, I played church with Gary, not with you guys.
Okay. Another thing we did, down the hill, there were a lot of sunflowers. And you know the sunflowers were so thick, we cut off the bottom and made a room. Then we made a hallway with cutting away those sunflowers, and we made another room. And we made 4 or 5 rooms like that. And that we played house. And then another thing we played a lot when I was little. See, I was the tail end of these guys and about the beginning of these guys. Anyway, another thing we played is with our dolls, the whole hospital. The whole house was our hospital. And we'd lay these towels in the bed, cover them up, and always would come back to see how our little babies were doing. That's how we played dolls. What else did we play?
Well, during the time everybody was getting married, we played wedding. Because there was Kathy and Randy and Julie, maybe Harvey, possibly Don and Gary. There was enough of us to play wedding. We played that a lot. And Julie says that you were the organ. She would lay across my lap, and I would lay on her back. She was the organ.
And we always played Catholic wedding, and Gary was the priest, and we had to kiss his foot.
I don't know why, because our neighbors were Catholic, and I guess we were really taken in by that. We really didn't know what it was all about. But yeah, we played Catholic wedding one time with Gary and Naomi. They just played together so much. And I saw them that they were all huddled together in a little part of a divan, or davenport is what we called it then. And they had all their supplies there. And I know there's Catholics in my family. My son-in-law is a Catholic, and I love him, and he loves Jesus with all his heart. But anyway, they were pretending like the Catholics were persecuting them. They were so sober. They were just sitting there. And then Naomi Jane has we love playing persecution. Naomi Jane has Catholics in her family, and I'm sure some of the others you do, and that's fine. That's fine. Because our neighbors were all Catholic, and that's what we thought was fun. We weren't necessarily making fun of them, it just we were ignorant.
There was a Catholic church there.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of friends.
A lot of friends of it. Yeah, we had a lot of friends of that faith, too, so.
A lot more stories.
I've already said too much.
Okay, I'm gonna say something. I get a little braver every time. When Albert was at rehab, one evening I said, well, let's go up and sing some songs by the piano. And so we started singing, Mary had a little lamb, or Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody that Earl Grey Goose is dead. The one I've been waiting, the one I've been waiting, the one I've been waiting to make a feather bed. And pretty soon, a number of those patients kept rolling up, and they wanted us to sing their song. And we never, I guess it was too late, they started to pick them up. And Albert said, we're bringing everybody back to their old young age. And then the next night, there was a man came at that night at noon. And he was singing love songs. Nobody knew but one lady, and she was a visitor. And he sang for hours. These poor ladies were just going like this, sleeping, trying to wake up, sleep. And then he was finished. No, well, he got about 1 or 2 claps. Then a man said, well, he wanted to sing a song. So he got up and sang something nobody knew. And I thought, I'm going to stand up. So I stood up and went to the front. And I sing, God Bless America. And everybody started to sing. When we were done, I got the biggest clap.
You know what? I sure learned a lot this morning.